Hey guys, welcome to the LT Brings the Heat podcast. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler, where we talk about baseball and sports performance. With topics ranging from coaching, business, and player development, our goal is to bring you a no BS approach to development in baseball and sports performance. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's rock and roll. Hey guys, welcome to the episode of LT Brings the Heat. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler. We got some topics today. Me and Adam were actually just talking about covering right before we hopped on. This is going to be fluid. This is going to be straight from the head and straight from the mind. We kind of talked about this. We saw some things online about people and parents struggling with their kids' mindsets, basically like a champion mindset. I saw some guy kind of talking about it that looked like the type of person that I see right through. I know Adam sees right through, and we're going to kind of address who to listen to and kind of advise who to take advice from, because that's a big deal for us, is making sure the advice you're getting is from somebody that's actually been there, done that, helped build athletes. And we're also going to kind of address basically technology and what we would be doing different if we were playing in this age nowadays, especially with so many advancements that have happened in the game the last 10 years. And well, my last season was in 2010. I know, Adam, you played longer than me and played some pro ball. But it's just amazing how crazy and how different things are the last 11 years and the changes. But how's everything going with you, Adam? And anything you want to hop on and kind of touch on and build off of what I just said?
Yeah, man, everything's going great down here. Our high school seasons kick off tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's raining all day today. It's supposed to rain all weekend. It's supposed to be cold. There's talk of possible snow on Tuesday. So it's just weird. It's about that time that, unfortunately, baseball season kicks off and Mother Nature doesn't want to agree with it. So we've all been there before. It kind of is frustrating early on, but it is what it is. It's what we signed up for. So hopefully the weather will clear up and these guys that have been training so long and got their seasons taken away from them last year can get back out there on the field, because I know they're all really, really excited to get going. What about you guys up there? How's everything going? I know you got Bulls practice starting this weekend.
Oh, yeah. So we got our first Bulls practice this Saturday. I'm actually going to text the guys here soon, right after this, to kind of update them and kind of what the plan is and everything. But it's still a good whopping single digits here in temperature wise. So we're enjoying that. We had like 8 inches of snow a couple weeks ago, and it's still frozen on the ground and crazy chunks of ice. So we're looking for, I was just telling Lauren, my wife, for those that are listening, as Adam knows, like we were like, man, I can't wait for spring to come. We're literally just, 6 weeks away. And sometimes spring comes early and we have really nice weather, and we're looking forward to it. Because you get stuck in this winter, and don't get me wrong, I love winter because it's the training and getting guys prepped for season and stuff. But you want to see these guys get out there and really get after it. So we're excited for that to start changing here soon. It's mid-February, so we're right around the corner. We're going to get rolling at the end of March here as the guys start going. But for our first topic, Adam, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, about technology and how things have changed. Kind of approach and kind of talk to us a little bit about how you want to talk about that and some things that you would do different and some things that kind of change your mindset of like, man, if I would have done this, like I would have been a completely different ball player. If I would have had this mindset or changed this approach based on this data, this would have kind of changed who I was as a player.
Yeah, definitely. This is something it's always nice to kind of look back and try to reflect. We're not really playing Monday morning quarterback because we kind of had our career. We went about it. And now we're here to do this podcast to talk about things that could be different now that we're always learning. And like you mentioned before, back when we were in college, it was over 10 years ago. So it's been a decade. It's crazy to think about, but it has been. And it was something that just kind of struck my mind before we came on is what is some stuff out there now that kids have access to that we didn't have, but we wish we would have, and how do we think that would have changed our game? And instantly, one thing I'm going to go to right away is like a Trackman unit that we can use on the field. South Alabama actually is in the process of getting one right now. The last time I talked to Coach Calvi, and I was almost just jealous that we didn't have something like this, just to kind of back up everything that we were feeling as we were hitting. And to start off from a hitting standpoint, I think the coolest thing about the Trackman, if you have this on your field, I know LSU, Coastal Carolina, you can just follow guys on Twitter and they're posting left and right about the stats of the day, who threw the hardest, who hit the furthest bomb, who hit the highest exit velocity. These are all cool things just to kind of keep notice, because when we played, we knew we hit the ball hard, but we didn't know exactly how hard. I think it would have been cool to kind of help chase some numbers during BP. Like, hey, we're going to do breaking ball, but we're going to see how hard we're hitting the breaking ball. Or we're going to do opposite field here, but we're going to work on driving the ball opposite field and seeing it instead of those little flares. And I think it kind of gives you the backup tool there. So another cool thing with the Trackman is if you're doing these during your scrimmages, you're really able to see they'll create a hot and cold zone for your hitters. So what me and Sean could do after we just played a scrimmage game, we could walk back in, get on the data on the Trackman and pull up, hey, I had 4 at-bats today. Where were my pitches that I was taking? Were they strikes? Were they balls? Am I swinging out of the zone? Am I swinging at pitches I shouldn't be swinging at? And that it just kind of helps you understand what is your strength as a hitter. And if you have a strength of hitting the inside pitch, why are you constantly chasing outside pitches? Or if it's the other way around, vice versa. And I think this could really help hitters understand like what is going on and having a plan and an approach to go with the numbers that come with it. Numbers are great. Like we talk about all the time, exit velocity, your angles, your spins, your exit direction is very cool, but also having that backup of the strike zone awareness is a really, really big part that I would have liked to see. And I know you would have too, to see, hey, if I can lay off that slider low and away, that's going to open my chances up for them to have to try to come back into my hitting zone. And then that's where my numbers can really see myself take off. So I would say a hitting Trackman unit would be number one. And a lot of maybe high schools, we don't have this in high school. So maybe it's more of a Rapsodo hitting monitor that you're using in the cage, not so much during live in games. And you can still really get this good understanding of what's going on in the cage, because a lot of us grew up, I was the same way. We had a length of 40-foot cages when I was in high school, and we weren't allowed to hit the top of the net. And so now you're just constantly hitting low line drives that barely are getting past the pitcher's mound. And then we got out to the field for take batting practice, and a lot of us were just hitting routine ground balls to short and third, and we didn't, or shortstop and second base, and we didn't know why. But it was because we were training so much of low line drives in the cage that was translating over to the field. So, like as me and Sean talked before, is now with the Rapsodo hitting monitor, or just by you judging and understanding angles, you're going to be able to practice extra base hit rounds in the cage. Whereas before it was always just low line drives opposite field that you were working on. So now you're really taking the cage, which we love the cage. We both live in the cage every single day, but we're taking the cage and acting like we're on the field. So I compare it to Steph Curry, is one of the best 3-point shooters of all time, but he practices constantly shooting these 3 balls. It would be like us going to the plate, and I wanted to hit more extra base hits, but I'm never practicing it. So I don't know if it just comes naturally. I wasn't a big, strong guy, so I wasn't gifted with it. It was something I had to work on. And that's something I would change drastically 10 years ago versus what I would do now. Is those later rounds, once I got loose, is I'm going to try to dominate extra base hit rounds as opposed to trying to hit hard singles that I'm trying to outrun the ball to first base. Because, yes, I was fast, I was left-handed, but there was a lot more times I wish now I would have stayed back on my backside and drove the baseball instead of kind of more slapping and running or hip gliding through and trying to beat out that 2-hopper to short. That, yeah, it feels really cool that you got a hit out of it, but as you got older and faced better shortstops, you started becoming out right away. And I'll never forget the time that kind of changed it all for me was playing minor league ball, and Andrelton Simmons is playing shortstop, and I hit a routine. It's a backhand. It's a ball I beat out all the time. This is kind of where I made my money in the 6-hole. And I was throwing out like 4 steps. It wasn't even close. And I'm like, all right, something's got to drastically change here, because I'm not going to be able to hit these ground balls and get where I want to be ultimately in the big leagues. I'm going to have to learn how to drive the ball in the air. So that's something that I would change, is more of an approach mindset and having this data. And watching video would be another thing. We didn't watch any video when I was at South Alabama. I don't remember ever even getting on the video screen to see my bats. We did it ourselves. I remember you'd have Lauren go sit on the other side and get film of you.
Yep.
My dad would get film of me on the other side. It's just, that was the only film we ever had. And looking back now, it's all of this whole time we were almost guessing at what we were doing wrong, as opposed to really getting to see what we were doing wrong. And being able to see yourself get off on your front side or glide through. Like I could feel that, but I didn't know how bad I was doing it at the time, where once I started to get around guys that understood it and would watch it, and literally we would watch our bats almost every day if we wanted to in the White Sox organization, that I kind of got to hone my skill set and keep me more in the phone booth, so to speak, instead of jumping out to try to hit the ball.
Yeah.
But what's something, Sean, I mean, I know I covered a lot there, but what's something you think that would have kind of helped take your game to another level?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I was sitting there and just in the back of my head, hearing you say that stuff, like on point. Absolutely. Like, the biggest thing for me is like what you just said of all those things. The video was a big factor. And guys nowadays, they have such an advantage to, it took us a long time to get feel and understanding what we were doing and how we were doing it. And I always tell guys, like, when you're practicing today, you're practicing to hit the elite guys. You're practicing to be the best against the best, not against Jimmy down the street that's throwing 80 poo, right? And we talk about that all the time. Is like, you can't lean on your past successes if those past successes are against people that are not going to be at that Division I level that you're wanting to play for, or not going to be at that elite level you're going to play for. And so listening and hearing you talk like that, I sit here and I talk about the cage swing versus the game swing. And for a long time, I used to think if I just, when I was hitting my first couple of years of college, a lot of the reps I wanted to do, I couldn't do because of injuries. So I had to make sure all the reps that I was doing was going to help me. And one thing that I never noticed is I'd be moving my hands around, or I'd be changing something in my stance because, again, 18, 19, 20 years old, you're still learning your feel and still getting that proprioception and still getting that awareness specifically against, the game that's sped up at that point in time for what it was in high school. And so the video, the last couple of years, my wife obviously was recording and I could see some stuff. And even then we didn't have that high frame by second type video that we can break things down quicker and see first movement, see, what I call the slot and the swing, seeing where my hands were at certain pitches, see if I was at a disadvantage on how my mechanics were against sliders away, what was causing me to not pick up the spin early enough. There's so many factors that for me, I would be watching my swings from the day before every day. That would be something I'd be doing. Like if I can record myself in some form and fashion, hitting BP or hitting live, I'm going to watch that. Especially at the Division I level, facing against, certain pitchers and certain guys. Number two would be, what you're talking about is a Trackman, like the feel. Like I would have loved to have had that on during batting practice. To kind of see the feel, because I had an idea of where I wanted to hit the ball my last few years of college versus the first few years of college. I was just, trying to hit for power, trying to hit in the gaps and kind of crush. And my swing would get too big sometimes in BP. And when my swing would get too big, it wouldn't translate to the game. Whereas when I try to make it shorter and more compact, now, again, this is me. So for those that are listening, I was a big and strong guy. So, I had to think being shorter, more compact, and I could still get my power off with that mindset. But once I started changing that, it would have been really nice to see the exit velocity, the spin, seeing where the ball was going and just kind of getting some data on the swings that made me feel really good versus the swings in the game. Obviously, like for me, I wanted to hit line drives about 10 feet in the air to 15 feet in the air to right center field about 4 of my 6 rounds. And I would have one round where I'd try to let it eat. And then there's one round, obviously, we were working on whatever we needed to work on from coaches from a hit and run bunting standpoint. But being able to see the feel and the spin and seeing the exit velocity on certain balls that I would hit to that side of the field, like, hey, if I hit, 95-mile-an-hour line drives to the right side of the field, and then in the game, I had this success against this pitcher. Or maybe we were facing a righty that had, throwing 92 with arm side run. What did I do wrong in my prep before that game? What did I do not change in the prep before that game? Being able to actually correlate and see things from game to game and practice and BP to BP. Those are things I wish I would have been able to do. Because again, like we were saying, everything was all about feel. But I would say the most important thing that I wish I could have done, especially from high school, is the mobility assessments that are readily available for everybody nowadays. Like I was a guy that was stiff, tight. I didn't train the small muscles like I should. I didn't know anything about band work in high school. In college, like I got introduced to the body blade way too late. There's so many things that I wish I would have been able to know about, my hip mobility, my low back, is the injuries that really affected me. And for those that are listening, like once you get an injury, you got to deal with it the rest of your life. Once you have a serious injury, it's going to affect everything that you do. The body's a kinetic chain. And, back then you just want to feel good. You want to be able to hit, and not knowing why my back got hurt or not knowing why my shoulder mobility sucked. Being able to do something like that, I would gladly, pay for whatever I need to pay if I could redo that again and understand what I needed to do. But at the same time, like you were saying, we went through all these trials and tribulations. We went through all these failures in order to become the good coaches, great coaches that we are today. So, at the end of the day, I wouldn't change anything, because it would allow me to be successful. It's allowed me to be successful as a coach and help build better athletes and better players than I ever thought about being. At least that's the mindset I want to approach and I want to take with every guy that I train. But like we were saying, for those that are listening, if we could redo this again, if we were in the same situation as some of these high school athletes are, we're going to take advantage of the mobility. We're going to take advantage of the readings, off the bat or exit velocities. We're going to take advantage of being and watching video and seeing video against live pitching. And if you're a guy that are listening right now and you don't care about any of these things, once you hit to a certain level, and maybe you can get away with it at the level you're playing at right now, but once you hit to a certain level, like Adam was saying, like, you got to change your game, because guys are going to run down balls. Guys are going to throw the ball 95 across the diamond if you're trying to hit in the hole. I remember I had this kid this past year that has made a living off of hitting in that 5-6 hole. And he's like a 6'8", 60 guy, but he's a left-handed guy. So, I mean, he's fast, but that's obviously not the world-class speed. And he gets in this habit of wanting to stay in that hole because that's what his coaches taught him all these years. And this is a big, strong kid that can really hit the ball in the gap. And very similar to what you're saying, Adam, is like things like this, like you got to understand the goals and what you're trying to achieve against the level of play that you're going to have to play against. Like, that's the thing, is like, once you understand where you're going and understand what you're trying to do, understand what your goals are, you have to match your work ethic, your practice with those goals.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot of great stuff, and the mobility stuff is something that athletes, like, if you're not doing this stuff and you're not taking advantage of what is there for you, or you're not around the right people, this is stuff that's going to keep you healthy. It's going to help you understand how you're supposed to move. Are you a tight mover? Are you a loose mover? You'll find out very quickly. So you'll do totally different drills and exercises that the opposite would do. It just helps clear up the picture, as opposed to us playing this guessing game for so long. And I was that guy that was strong in the weight room as I got to college, but I spent my whole career trying to hit the line drives of shortstop, where I didn't know when it was time to turn it on to drive the ball in the gap. I never really got to practice that. So it was something later on in my career I actually started to take full advantage of and have that, and it opened up everything. I hit higher. I had more extra base hits. There's a lot more success that come that way. But as opposed to it had always worked for me in high school and junior college, even at South, it had worked for me. It was very tempting to be like, why do I need to change? But it wasn't until I saw it visually with my own eyes, like, this isn't going to work anymore, especially with them having shifts and all this other stuff now. Like, if you're facing teams that are studying you and they see that that's what you're going to try to do, they're going to try to take it away from you. If they see that you're a guy that likes to bunt early in the thing, they're going to pull up and they're going to make you try to beat them with your bat. So your speeds, yes, it's the backup plan. They just took away your number one skill from you. So now what do you have to go to counterbat that so you can get everything back? We had a kid in the cage last night. He reminded me a lot of myself, 15-year-old left-handed leadoff type of guy, skinnier, hit one 88, 89 exit velos off the Rapsodo, and his eyes were open. But that last round, we worked on a head in the count, 2-0, get your pitch and drive it. If it's not yours, just take it. And then after that, he followed up with, hey, can we work on some base hit bunts off the hack-attack pitching machine? And he's training both of his games because he has that. So if you have speed, get the bat right too, and now you have two components as opposed to just trying to go up there with just one component that you have working for you. So I'm glad you hit on the mobility. The other stuff, man, it's just, if this information is being presented to you and you're not taking it and running with it, like, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're not reaching your ultimate potential that you could get in this game. And I promise you, the more that you may not think this stuff is important, you're seeing colleges, you're seeing even some high schools now buy into this stuff. They're buying into the throwing programs, the Florida Baseball Ranch program, let's buy into mobility assessments. Let's change our strength and conditioning. Let's change the way we do rounds in BP. We'll do our first round of BP. We'll work our stuff like we have to get them over, 2 get them in, 2 bunts, whatever it is. But then after that, let's work on driving the ball oppo with authority. And then after that, let's do our extra base hit rounds and then kind of finish up, have some fun, and see who can leave the ballpark. That's something that people are slowly starting to come aboard to, and it's cool to see, but I think it's going to keep going, leaning more in that direction as opposed to kind of the old way that we always used to do things. So now's the time to kind of adapt and start to try some of these things out. And if you find something that doesn't work for you, then you don't have to do it anymore. Then try to move something on. But if you're always just staying the same, you're not getting better. So you need to challenge yourself to look for a way to improve. And that's ultimately what just kind of led up to this discussion is, what would we change now, knowing if we had the accessibility to do this? And I think both of us will say all the stuff we just mentioned would go into it. And the last thing you mentioned about being short and like staying short to the ball, I think the coolest thing would have been to have Trackman, but then how short of a swing can I take but still hit the ball at 98 miles an hour? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, hey, when I get long, I go about 101, 103, but I know that's not going to work against velo. I want to try to train the shortest, quickest bat path, but still pop a 98, 99, or 100. And that's the way you can really use that thing to an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially like when it comes to, the swings off the tee versus swings in the game. And I tell guys, like, I always use the analogy, and Adam's heard this saying this a couple times, like, boxers work a speed bag, boxers work a heavy bag, boxers have some hand-eye coordination. They have bags that move, that move. They're trying to work on shortening their punches up. Do those punches on certain, like the punches they have on the speed bag, is that going to be the same punches in the actual fight? Hell no, it's not going to be the same. But there's certain things that you're working on, certain things that help you with the feel, the timing, the reaction, the precision, that allow you to make that transfer. And I remember I read in an article, I can't remember what website it was on. It was a lot of those websites from that one doctor from Illinois that or PhD, if you will, the guy in Illinois that talks about baseball graphs. It's like something baseball graphs. I can't remember. But anyways, fan graphs. There you go. Yep. But he was talking about, like, be wary of your attack angle on the tee versus the attack angle in the game. Like, you can't have this bigger swing off the tee. It's not going to translate to the speed in that first movement that you want in the game. And that's, I try to get guys to understand that, like, when you're doing tee work, you're performing an objective. You're performing something that's going to help your swing out. We do one arm drills. Are we going to swing one arm in the game? Hell no. We're trying to clean up movements with each individual arm. And I'm a guy, and people are going to hate this that listen to this. And Adam, I know you're different. I don't have any problem with people that do this, but I actually hate with a passion guys that track balls off a tee. And like people that pretend that they're seeing a pitch off the tee and then they look at the tee last second. And there's a lot of reasons I don't like it, and I'll make a video of it one day. But guys, they change their shoulder angle, they change their hands once they make that transfer. And I use the example of, like, anybody that's ever shot a gun or shot a bow at a target before. You're not pretending that there's an animal or a human being running and then shooting at the target. You're staring at the target because your objective with that is, all right, I'm going to be as clean and quick and direct as I can. I want to nail this target. I'm practicing a specific movement. Like for me off the tee, I'm staring at the ball. I might have a blue dot or a blue line on the ball that I'm having guys look at. Maybe they're looking at the top seam. Maybe they're looking at the bottom seam. Whatever if they have big swings, short swings, if they're too down, we're looking at bottom of the ball. Like, there's certain things that we do. And sometimes guys, and a lot of guys are completely unaware. They'll try to track balls off that tee, and they're doing it incorrectly. Like I said, for those that listen, I don't mind if people do that, but every other thing that we do when the ball's moving, we're tracking a ball. Guys throwing in BP, guys throwing in screen toss, we're tracking everything. For me, my objective is I'm seeing them watch the ball on the tee the whole way. That's my objective right there. And I sorry, I just wanted to get off into that tangent right there.
No, you're good. Yeah.
A lot of people that are different because there's different feels for people, different reasons, and the swing and the attack angle on that tee versus attack angle and screen toss versus attack angle and BP versus the attack angle in the game. Those are going to be different depending on the velocity of the baseball and what you're trying to do right there. I always tell guys, like, we want to learn the movement. We want to get a feel for the movement on screen toss. We want to get a feel for the movement on the tee so you can control your body. Once you're able to control and perform the movement correctly, now we've got to do it live. We got to do it where, your timing is based on somebody else. Like off the tee, it's easy to control a lot of things because the ball's stationary. Screen toss, a lot of times the ball's moving slow, or you could see the ball and track the ball easier. What about a downhill plane, on a baseball where you have the reaction time of a 90-mile-an-hour fastball? Is that movement going to transfer? Well, we have to work on that. Otherwise, it's not going to transfer. Those are just things that people are listening. Like, a lot of people look over and they're not aware of. Like, there's different feels for different drills. There's different movements that you have to understand that help swings differently. Like, I'm a big fan of high tee, kind of helping up the angle. Is your attack angle on the high tee perfect? No, but sometimes it helps you get that feel for those high velocity pitches. So guys that are listening, you have to be willing to learn it and understand, like, what has got you success in the past, might not necessarily get you success in the future. So being able to utilize this technology that you guys have, being able to utilize these things that you have at your disposal, it's so important. You have to have that growth mindset. Just because a coach is teaching you or telling you something you haven't heard before doesn't mean you shouldn't listen. You should listen to what everybody's saying, and then you take and run with what really helps.
Yep, for sure. And I mean, we didn't even dive into the pitching side if we were different, which I know we weren't pitchers in college, but just being able to throw on a pitching Rapsodo these days and the readings tell you that your slider isn't as good as you think it is. Your breaking ball, your curve ball is actually better. Now I think it just helps them easier understand, all right, my fastball's doing this, My breaking ball is doing this. I can ditch this pitch because I don't need it anymore. And then I can throw my changeup off all of this, trying to blend all of my pitches together. And I think pitching in the last 10 years really surpassed of where it used to be, because even when we were at South, I mean, I think our guys just threw bullpens all the time. It wasn't anything tracking to let us know that one pitch is good, one pitch is bad. I mean, a lot of the times I don't even think they were throwing our radar guns. So now you're really being able to see. You watch this big league spring training. It's about to kick off here. Turn it on MLB Network. I promise you, every major league pitcher is throwing a live bullpen with a pitching Rapsodo on them, as well as one of those cameras is right beside them doing the slow-mo breakdown. And they're doing this every single time they throw a bullpen. So I couldn't even imagine if this was around 10 years ago where pitchers could have been, and maybe we would want some more ball games back at South Alabama.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, especially what's your velo like when you're training the way you're training right now in January? What's your velo like when you're training in March? Are you tracking, what your velo is? Are you tracking where guys are going? Right now we have this advantage where, we write down all of our numbers in the weight room. So if I see a guy that's doing extra stuff, maybe he's doing stuff with his high school, if his numbers are going down, that kid's either one, not recovering from his training. Number two, it's an eat, sleep, nutrition, hydration thing. Or three, maybe he's overtraining. And you're able to see these numbers and see these and track this velocity, but it also allows guys to understand hey, you're going to have outings where your velocity maybe not be there. Sometimes, the way the CNS works, and sometimes you show up, you just don't have it for that day. And like you were saying before, you got to be able to pitch, you got to be able to perform when you're not feeling that well. I can remember playing sicker than hell. We were at Arkansas State one time, and I had to cheat and start way early on my swing just because I felt bad. I had the flu. I felt like crap. There's different feels. You have to be able to train in certain environments, but you also have to be aware, okay, this guy's numbers, he's doing a 3-rep max today. His numbers are way down. His 10-yard dash is down. His velocity is down. We got to do something. We need to get this kid some rest. We needed to get this kid some recovery training and help him kind of get back to his peak. So that's another advantage that we have now too, is being able to track and understanding what you guys are doing. But also you can see what helps the most. What if your velo's high when you're doing this type of work, that's what we need to be doing. That's what we need to be maintaining. You got to learn, in order to be able to find and push the envelope, you got to find how far you can go. And that's a big thing for me, is you got to push the level when it comes to your work ethic, and be able to see that. And using all this data, and I have Excel sheets to do all this stuff. There's apps now to do all these things. Apps just piss me off because they don't work half the time. So Microsoft Excel, man, it works like a charm, and I could track guys to see projected maxes. I could track their 10-yard dash, their pro agility, and it really allows me to kind of see their first movement and be able to see what's moving and what's not working, and go from there. And this is all stuff, again, I didn't know anything about when I played, but for guys that are listening, these are things that your coaches should be doing. And on the other side of this, you don't need all this data. You don't need all this technology too. You can use a radar gun and use Microsoft Excel to monitor and understand where your numbers are from week to week, and be just as successful, especially if you have awareness of your body too, and awareness of your feel and your pitches and so many other things, as we've talked about before in the past. So there's definitely both ends of the spectrum, but you've got to be able to approach both ends with success and trying to be successful from the field versus the technology in this game.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that for the last point is, from a showcase standpoint, instead of paying $850 to go run a 60, throw across the infield, throw from the outfield, take BP, you can do this stuff on your own. So you find a stopwatch, go to a field, run your 60. You can find somebody, Pocket Radar's $300, I believe. Somebody probably has one sitting around. Go your running guns across the infield. See what you're throwing. Running guns from the outfield. Take your BP. If you have a chance to maybe hit on a hit tracks or hit on a Rapsodo, you're going to have numbers to go beside it. So now, instead of paying all this money to try to figure out what your measurables are, you already know. So you're not wasting this $850 to go to a showcase. When you get there, you're going to run a 7.6 and you only throw 72, and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't know that. This is all stuff you should know prior to it, because everybody, like we talked about before, is they're looking at measurables to first get you noticed. Then after that, we start to dissect the player, what they look like, what's their attitude, everything that goes with it. But those measurables are the ones that are getting kids noticed faster than anybody else. So let's make sure we have good measurables and know what those measurables are before we go out there and try to put it on to showcase, because you got to have something to showcase. You can't just show up there and expect to get college recruiting letters just because you attended a perfect game event.
Okay, there it goes. Well, I was muted for a second. My bad, guys. So, and to hop on back on what I was actually talking about earlier, I completely forgot because you mentioned pitchers. Is, you know, if, say for instance, you're a conference and you face a guy a couple of times, or there's guys on your team a couple of times, and you see maybe his percentage of his curveball that's in the zone and out of the zone. You know, you were talking about guys being able to see and attack your weaknesses. If you're unable to throw the curveball for a strike at the high school level, you know, that word's going to get around and guys are going to lay off that pitch and try to go off the one that's going to be in the zone. You know, as soon as guys start seeing your weaknesses, they're going to attack those. And that's one thing I wanted to mention. And even though I feel like it's inferred, there's sometimes we got to say things to reach different people. But if you have one strength, and it is something that people can immediately see and defeat, you know, you got to be able to have that second pitch on the bump. You got to be able to understand, like, okay, maybe you throw 90 miles an hour. You know, maybe your spin rate's low and you're trying to elevate. That's a bad idea. Those guys are going to hammer that pitch. You got to understand like what you're trying to do. If your curveball's in the zone only 20% of the time, that hitting coach, if he sees you missing a lot, even though it's nasty, they're going to tell those kids to spit on that. And you're going to have to beat them with another pitch. So it's very easy to fall in love and be happy with your strengths and be like, hey, well, I'm going to roll with this. I'm going to ride with this. You know, if that strength is world class, yeah, you can probably ride that the rest of your life. But very few guys are born with that world class without working toward it. That's for sure. And guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure you guys leave that 5-star review if you enjoyed it. Make sure you guys share, share that podcast, get it out there. We want to help as much as we can. I do want to build into some confident stuff here in the future. We'll kind of talk about a little bit more examples of how you can kind of build that mindset in the future. But if you guys enjoyed it, make sure you guys leave that 5-star review again. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.